Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. When a player gets traded from one team to another, often in the trade, there will be conditional picks attached. The conditions are usually pretty simple. It says something like if this player is on the roster, or plays a certain percentage of games or snaps, then either an additional pick will be thrown in, or one of the picks will be upgraded. We just saw this with the Carson Wentz trade a few months ago between Philadelphia and Indianapolis. If Wentz plays 75% of the snaps for the Colts in 2021, or plays 70% and the Colts make the postseason, then the second rounder in 2022 gets upgraded to a first rounder. Throwing a conditional pick into a trade is common practice, and is not unusual. However, sometimes these conditions can be bizarre, and can lead to strange situations at the end of the season. Case in point, the 1993 season involving the New York Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals. When the Bengals shipped their star quarterback to the Jets, because of one of the conditions, Jets fans across the country were actually rooting for their team to lose, and were rooting for their Pro Bowl quarterback to play like garbage. And this is the story behind one of the most bizarre trade scenarios in NFL history. Before I talk about the trade and the bizarre condition in it, we need some context as to why the Bengals were trading Esiason in a way to begin with, and why the Jets were so interested in the former MVP quarterback. Boomer is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals, and is probably only behind Ken Anderson in terms of the best player to ever play under center for the team. He made 3 Pro Bowls. He was named the MVP of the league in 1988, after leading the league in passer rating and yards per pass attempt, and after guiding the Bengals to their second Super Bowl appearance in franchise history. In his near decade-long stint with the team, the second-round pick from 1984 had more than surpassed expectations. However, by the time the 1992 season came to an end, it was clear that his time in Cincinnati was over. The Bengals spent their first-round pick that year on Houston quarterback David Klinger, hoping that he would be the successor at the position. Boomer had the worst year of his career, as he threw more touchdowns than interceptions while posting a career-worst passer rating of 57. And after Boomer had back-to-back atrocious games in the middle of the season, where he went 11 for 33 with 109 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and an 18.4 passer rating in a loss to the Jets, and went 12 for 25 with 64 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and a 21.2 passer rating in a loss to the Lions, it was over. Boomer rode the bench for the final 5 games, with Klinger becoming the new starter. Friction and tensions were high between Boomer and the Bengals, and everyone was ready to move on by this point. Boomer was very blunt, saying there's no way in the world I want to play for this team again next year. There's no way I could walk into that locker room and play for these coaches next year. Mike Brown had every intention of getting a trade done before the season started. All he needed to do was find a trade partner. That's where the New York Jets come into play. And as part of the trade, a bizarre clause would be put in that made for a crazy finish to the upcoming season. When the league year officially began in March, the Jets sealed the deal and completed a trade with the Bengals to acquire Boomer's talent. While one side reason for the trade may have been to increase their chances at landing Reggie White in free agency, the main reason was pretty obvious. They needed a quarterback. Their issues at the position were well documented by this point, as the Browning-Nagel experiment the year before did not work out at all. I made a video about Nagel's disastrous time with the Jets, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Boomer was going to come in and compete for the starting job, and was likely going to win it. When the trade happened, Browning said, "Why are you paying so much for a backup?" That is absolutely hysterical, since Browning was absolutely terrible in 1992, and was now going to be the backup since there was no way whatsoever that he was winning this job over a former MVP who was much better than him. But getting back to the trade, the Jets gave up a 3rd-round pick in 1993, and a conditional 2nd-round pick in 1994. What was the condition? Well, the condition was a pretty bizarre one. The condition was that Boomer had to have a passer rating of 89 or higher. If he eclipsed that mark, then the Jets would have to give up their 2nd-round pick. There's a question that I'm sure a lot of you have right now. Why 89? What is so special about that number? I have 2 theories. One of them is a bit complex. From 1986 to 89, Bruce Coslet was the offensive coordinator of the Bengals, and was there with Boomer. Over that time period, Boomer's passer rating was 87.3. In 1988, which is the midpoint of those years if we exclude 1987 because of the strike and the scab game screwing everything up, the league-wide average passer rating was 72.9. In 1992, that jumped up by about 2 points to 75.3. So theory 1 says that the clause was put in there to say that if Boomer plays like he did under Coslet, then adjusting for the era and the rise in quarterback play, the Bengals should be compensated more. The second theory is a bit simpler. In 1992, there were 4 quarterbacks who had a passer rating above 89. You had Steve Young, Chris Miller, Troy Aikman, and Warren Moon accomplish this feat. If Boomer had a passer rating of 89, it meant that he would likely be a top 5 quarterback in the league. And if Boomer plays at a top 5 level, then the Bengals should be compensated more. Whatever the case, the 89 passer rating clause was in there. But Boomer was terrible over the previous 2 seasons. In 1991 and 92, he threw more picks than touchdowns. His passer rating in 1992, as I mentioned before, was 57, which was not only the worst of his career, but ranked 23rd out of 25 qualified quarterbacks. It was so bad that it was only 1 point higher than what Browning-Nagel did. And may I remind you, Browning-Nagel stunk. Surely this clause wasn't actually going to come into play, right? Prepare yourselves for a pleasant surprise. In 1993, somehow, Boomer had completely rebounded, and at the start, was looking like one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. Through 13 games, the Jets were 8-5. Considering the fact that they were 4-12 the year before and looked outright incompetent at times, the Jets being good was somewhat shocking. And a big reason why that bounce back happened was because of Boomer, who not only won the starting spot pretty easily over Browning-Nagel, but played really well. A game against the Patriots where the Jets won 45-7 and he completed over 80% of his passes. A game against the Eagles where he threw 4 touchdowns. An incredible game against the Dolphins where the Jets won 27-10, while Boomer went 23 for 32 with 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. The good news for the Jets was that they finally had good quarterback play, as Boomer was named to the Pro Bowl for the 4th time in his career. The bad news? That second-round conditional pick was looking extremely likely to convey. The Jets lost their next 2 games after an 8-5 start to fall to 8-7. The only game they had left was the Sunday Night Football battle on ESPN against the Houston Oilers. From a draft pick standpoint, all eyes were on Boomer. His passer rating entering that season finale was 87.1. He had crossed the 89 threshold in 8 games, and was coming off of a game against the Bills where he had a passer rating of 113.9. At this point, Coslett had 2 options. Option 1 was to not play Boomer for the final game and just play Browning-Nagel. Give the young guy another chance to see what he can do, and you guarantee the fact that you're keeping your second-round pick intact. Option 2 was to play Boomer. If Boomer goes off, it could kill you, since you're missing out on a possible top 40 pick in the draft. What did Coslett decide to do? He couldn't care less about the future of the team. He couldn't care less about the trade. He decided that he was going to play Boomer. Maybe it's because he knew the writing was on the wall and he wasn't even going to be there in 1994 to reap the benefits of the possible second-round pick. Maybe it's the fact that not playing Boomer would have looked like he was blatantly not trying. Putting in a worse quarterback to sabotage another team in the season finale of Sunday Night Football. Why does that sound familiar? Regardless, Coslett was adamant about Boomer playing, saying if you think that I would pull him out of the game, or anything like that to hurt our team's chances to win because of his ratings, you're full of it. He then added that Boomer not only gives the Jets the best chance to win the game, but that he wasn't going to compromise his integrity or professionalism, and for anyone to insinuate otherwise is off the wall. And with that, we go to January 2nd, 1994. The Houston Oilers are taking on the New York Jets at the Astrodome in the regular season finale for both of these teams on national television. But it led to a bizarre situation where you had Jets fans rooting against their own team and quarterback so that they'd be able to keep their second-round pick. How did the game turn out? Let's just say the Jets found a way to lose twice. In terms of Boomer's on-the-field play, he stunk. There's no other way to describe it. Boomer had fallen off a bit over the second half of the season compared to the first half, but in this game, the wheels just completely came flying off. It might have been his worst game of the season. He went 11 for 26, completing just 42% of his passes. He threw for 119 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and took a season-high 4 sacks. When the game ended, he finished with an abysmal passer rating of 40.4, as the Jets got shut out 24-0. It was a bad ending to the season, as after a promising start, the Jets completely collapsed down the stretch. The good news for the Jets was that because of Boomer's awful performance, he finished the season with a passer rating of 84.5. For what it's worth, only 3 quarterbacks crossed the 89 threshold that year, with Steve Young, Troy Aikman, and John Elway eclipsing that mark. However, because Boomer could not do that, the Jets were able to keep their second-round pick. Their second-round pick, which was pick number 41, was not going to convey to the Bengals anymore. It was staying in the Big Apple. That raises the final question. What did the Jets do with the pick? They took Wyoming wide receiver Ryan Yarbrough. If that name sounds familiar to you, I don't know why that is, because he did absolutely nothing in the NFL. He played just 2 seasons with the Jets. In those 2 years, he had 24 receptions for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Jets were god-awful drafting wide receivers in the second round during the 1990s. Between him, Reggie Rembert, and Alex Van Dyke, it was a mess. So while the Jets were able to keep that second round pick, based on what they got in return, yeah, it wasn't worth it in the slightest bit. The Boomer Esiason trade might be one of the strangest of all time considering the circumstances. When you have fans actively rooting for your Pro Bowl quarterback to play poorly, and when you have fans begging for Browning Nagel to appear in a nationally televised game, you know that the conditions are somewhat bizarre. And it was all because of a little statistic known as passer rating. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JarrowGator9 and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.